give him a big round of applause. Professor Rob Harding.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to your amazing conference today. I'm Rob Harding. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Capital One in the UK, part of Capital One Bank, for those that have heard of it, one of the top 5 banks in America. And what I thought I'd talk to you about today were the 10 things that I've learned, the path that the UK business, Capital One in the UK, has been taking to become a much more agile business. And I use the word path because we're definitely still on it. I wouldn't say this is a finished journey, but I think that's important because I think given the stage we're at with it, I've definitely seen the good, I've seen some of the bad, and I've certainly seen some of the ugly, and I hope to share that today with you. And I've tried to summarize it in 10 things, and then hopefully I will be hanging around for the rest of the conference. If you've got any questions you want to dig into, grab me at any time over the next couple of days. So let me jump in. See, before I start, a little bit about me, because you don't know me, a little bit about me. So I was born in the United Kingdom. My mother was a music teacher, and my dad was a scientist. So you can see myself up there on the picture. Some say that I inherited my mother's good looks. Some say I look like my dad, but I can't see it myself. So my mum wanted me to be a musician, and my dad always thought I'd be a scientist. But actually, from an early age, I loved computers. This is a picture of my first computer. I was actually a little bit older. I've taken a bit of creative license with the picture. I was a little bit older than this, but that's my first computer, a Sinclair ZX Spectrum, and I had many a happy hour playing on that, writing all sorts of programs and games. When I eventually did grow up, actually I haven't fully grown up yet, as you'll probably see through this presentation, but I went to university in Nottingham and I studied physics. And then after university, I went on to work in a number of roles in the utilities industries for a variety of electricity generation and supply companies. Then I took a little bit of a career break where I grew my hair. If you can pick it out, I'm kind of on the right-hand side with slightly bad long hair on there, and I was a musician for a very short period of time, which was a lot of fun, and then I worked out it's very hard to make money doing that, and eventually my girlfriend, now wife, said, hey, let's get a house and you need a job for that. So I joined Capital One, which I think is one of the most amazing companies on the planet, and I've been there since 1999, which is a testament to how amazing I think it is. And this is our story, really, and the story starts here. On a sunny day in September 2013, I was in our American offices in Richmond, Virginia. I was talking to the global CIO, and I was feeling pretty pleased with myself, as I often do. I was thinking, we're doing some good stuff here in the UK, and I'd put this little slide together for him that showed all of the projects, all the amazing projects we've been doing over the last few years. And as I say, I was feeling pretty good. You know, we'd come off the back of some big projects, we're starting some others. And then he did that thing that senior executives do to you from time to time. They ask you a question that makes you feel really, really stupid. And he said, isn't it strange that all of the work that the UK business seems to be doing, it just seems to take a minimum of 12 months. And look, at some of those things, they're taking 24 months, 36 months. Are you really sure that as a technology group that I was running, that you are really so setting yourself up so that you can respond to the way that the market is moving? A little bit like we heard from the professor earlier on. The rules have changed. And the rules to win in this particular game, playing games that last 36 months is probably not the way that you win. Have you really thought about that? And, you know, shame on me, I had not really thought about that. I was feeling pleased with myself. I was sitting down expecting kind of high fives, is what they do in America. I was expecting high fives in the corridor for all this amazing work my team were doing. And he was like, I'm not sure that this is the way that you should be running things. And we've been experimenting with Agile here in the US. You should find out more. So I thought, oh, this is very, very interesting. And very sad, because I thought I'd done a great job. What he was really pointing out was this, and I took this from a website called responsive.org, but I like the quote. The tension between organizations optimized for predictability and the unpredictable world they inhabit has reached breaking point. I think that's a neat build on what we heard in the first hour of today. And it's certainly very true. Our business, the way that we were working was brilliant when we were in a recession and not actually doing much work. But as we'd started to return to market and we were looking for the business to grow, we were finding we were tripping over ourselves because things were taking way too long. And we were in this strange paradigm where my team were able to sort of sit down and create 3-year plans But then we actually had no real way of executing on them. And actually by the time we got to sort of 6 months into the 3-year plan, we sort of tore it up and started again. So it was a really artificial way of working. It just so happened, coincidentally, that at that point in time, towards the end of 2013, we got a new head of the UK business, a man called Chris Newkirk, who brought with him a very, very different dream and aspiration for the UK business. I remember sitting down with him and Karen, who you'll hear from tomorrow, and a number of the execs in the UK, and listening to Chris just come up with this phrase that he hadn't planned. He said, you know what, I want to turn the UK business into a software and information-led company, because I think that's the way that we'll succeed over the coming years. And this was music to my ears, because I'd wanted to experiment with a number of things over that kind of course of time, but I'd never really had either the money or the permission to do it. And Chris sat there and he came out with this pretty amazing quote. And I thought, actually, yeah, I can see how that would work for Capital One in the UK. And I stuck my hand up. I said, all right, Chris, I'll help you try and structure what I saw as the first horizon. Certainly not how to get there, but certainly maybe the first 12, 24 months worth of transformation activity that really set us on that path. And we came up with this imperative that you can see here of accelerating our digital journey. And probably the 3 big items, the big ticket items on that, one was embracing Agile, not just at a technology level in my team, but as a business as a whole, making that business able to make decisions far faster than it had done in the past, and then being able to take those decisions and actually put products in the hands of our customers out in the market far more quickly. So that was the first thing on our list of things to tackle. The second was I wanted to take more control of the software assets that we owned. We had extensively outsourced our business in 2008, 2009. And I felt that that was a big barrier, because in doing that, we'd really, really entrenched ourselves in a waterfall way of working. Because when you work with a lot of third parties, you tend to get into a very contractual conversation with them, and it leads you into a waterfall mindset. I felt that if I insourced some of the engineering groups, if I built out a different set of skills and a different set of practices within the technology shop, I could really empower the business, because we'd have much more ownership of those software assets and be able to fly. And then the final thing on the list, and I mentioned it more as a kind of a side thing, was that the business had been founded on an information-based strategy, and yet as technology had evolved, we'd lost track really of some of the emerging technology and how to make the best of that in improving that original kind of information-based strategy. So there was a whole piece around data labs that we wanted to get into. So that was the Accelerate Our Digital Journey imperative, and Agile was at the cornerstone of it. So in 2014, we set up an experiment. And this is my first lessons learned. Experiments are brilliant, but they only get you so far. And this experiment was very, very good. What we did was we took some people from the technology team, the marketing team, and the operations team, and we said, right, lose your association with the department that you've come from and operate as a team solving a business problem. And that business problem was booking new accounts. And the head of the team said, I want to improve our account booking rate by 10% over the next year. You know what? I only know how to do the first 4% of that. The other 6% we're going to have to work out along the way. So it was ideally suited to an agile way of working as our first experiment. And we saw some really, really interesting results from this experiment. First of all, most people really, really liked that way of working. Not everyone, but most people. And most people started to see their association with that team as far stronger than the teams that they'd come from. So if I was in that team, I didn't think of myself as a software engineer anymore. I felt of myself as part of the winning high street team, which is what we called it. And then over the year, they actually achieved that first 4%. They came up with innovative ideas to get the next 1 and 2%, and they did get to the 10% by the end of the year. So we liked what we were seeing, and this was, they probably got to that by September 2014. But an experiment can only get you so far, because although I was seeing some fantastic business results from this particular piece of work that was going on, I had the rest of my organization still operating in the old way of working. My team's about 600 in total. So there's a lot of people, and probably only about 100 of them were operating in this mode. So we weren't making the best of our resources, and we certainly weren't making the best. We pride ourselves on being a great place to work. We've won it 3 years in a row. And we were hearing from people in this experiment that this was a great place to work. And I wanted that for everybody else. So we needed to take that leap of faith. And that was a hard thing to do because my team were telling me, we're just not ready, we're just not ready. And we did a little bit of planning, and we had a look at how we would sort of redraw the landscape if we took everybody from these waterfall teams and said, right now they are assigned to Agile teams of 8, 9, sort of 10 in size. And it didn't look great on paper, but I kind of reached a point where I didn't want to dual run this anymore. So on January the 1st, 2015, we just flipped the switch and we moved over on the promise from me that we would just fix it in the mix. And I would let people off the hook a little bit if it broke along the way. So we took that leap of faith, lots of books on everything. And one thing that a bookworm can tell you is what you are doing is not pure Agile. It's not pure DevOps. It's not pure anything. Interestingly, there are very few bookworms that can actually tell you how to make things better. The bookworms delight in telling you that what you're doing is not particularly very good. I like the bookworms that can help me. The bookworms that tell me I'm not doing great stuff frustrate the hell out of me. But that's another story for another conference. Then there's another population I call the builders. And actually, interesting, the builders, that really came from the group of people where we'd run that first experiment through 2014. And with the builders, they just like to get stuff done. They like to get code written. They like to get products shipped. They like to get stuff out to market. Now, if the Agile transformation helped them build stuff, that was brilliant. But if it didn't, Rob, then I'm not really interested because I'm building stuff. Can you leave me alone, please? And then the final group, the group I actually love and the group I sort of make sure they got everything they needed, was what I call the pioneers. And they were willing to take a lot of stuff on faith. They really got behind the why of the transformation. And although the group started pretty small, over time they collected followers. And a number of people from the other groups started to join them, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we actually started to get to a critical mass and they really started to drive it. But don't expect when you flick the switch in your organizations that everyone is going to love this, because I speak from experience when I say there's a lot of people that don't like it, and you just really have to work with that because you still have to do business. To the point where we'd obsess about allocating down to the nearest pound and making the best use of everything. All of a sudden, we were dealing in the unit of team, and that was a very, very liberating way of operating, I felt, because all of a sudden, an accountable exec knew whether they had a team to work on their thing or not. You couldn't kind of have half a team. You either had a team or you didn't have a team. But what was interesting is this really, really changed the dynamic and created a lot of tension at the start of this year, because up until that point, the organization as a whole, and the technology group in particular, had taken a lot of pride in just doing a lot of stuff. You know, we love doing a lot of stuff, and whether we were working on 40 projects or 50 projects, it was like more projects the better. You know, give me 60 projects, give me 70. At our peak, I think we had 90 projects running, which, in looking back now, was just crazy. But at the time, we were thinking, like, we're amazing. We can do 90 projects at once, and this is amazing. When we actually flipped the switch and went Agile across the board, it turned out that the true capacity of our organization was somewhere close to about 20 projects. And that was just extremely devastating for people that effectively wanted those other 70 to get worked on, because all of a sudden there were no teams to work on them. And so a lot of unhappy people saying, well, I had this stuff to do. And what was interesting, as soon as you get into a conversation about allocating teams to it, all of a sudden, the cost of projects becomes a lot more real. And then people are forced to actually justify why they want to do those projects. So the conversation about value comes to the forefront, and you tend to find that amongst those 70 things we were no longer working, there weren't that many that were very high value. And in fact, the ones that were high value, we raised additional money and we built teams and we did that work. So I said it was a clear out for the organisation, but a very, very painful, probably like 3 of the most painful months in my career, I think, going through that transition from the 90 projects to the 20, and dealing with the sort of executive fallout from that. This is the only slide I got on DevOps. This is my DevOps slide. I don't even mention DevOps. But on day one, so in 2013, when I was thinking about this, I'd thought of Agile very much as a process change. It quickly became apparent on day 2 of my thinking on this that it was actually a talent challenge in addition to a process change. And I say that because I had an organization that was completely geared to handle big 3-year, 2-year waterfall projects. And when I looked at the types of roles I had in my team, the seniority and where that seniority sat, I just had lots of senior project managers, basically, and lots of senior people to handle interactions with third parties. And what I actually needed was lots of senior engineers. And to some extent, I didn't really have any engineers because during the period where we outsourced, those engineers had moved to India. So the talent challenge is one that I've been wrestling with since way back in 2014, and still wrestling with it now, because it's actually a very, very competitive marketplace in the UK, a place where you can do continuous integration and continuous development. You have to start to re-architecture because some of your legacy systems are just not suited to it. Some are, but that was fortune rather than planning, and many aren't. So what we're doing gradually is rebuilding things, and at the point that they're rebuilt, we find that we're in a much better space. So a good example is we rebuilt our mobile app. We had a mobile app out in market, and it was so painful to change, we only deployed one version of it, never updated it, and then it got criticized to death in the App Store. Our new mobile app, we can now release versions of it every 2 weeks. And what we do is we don't tend to release versions to our customers every 2 weeks, but we tend to release a version to our employees so that they can beta test it. And that's something we could never have dreamed of a couple of years ago. So it's a good example of where a combination of process talent and changing the architecture has allowed us to really embrace Agile to its fullest extent. Lesson 5, you have to change the way you organize yourselves. And many of you will have heard this quote around, we organize one way for the agricultural age, we organize another way for the industrial age, and we should be organizing in a very different way for the information age, but many of our companies, mine included, are still organized for the industrial age. Now, as we have moved to working in a far more agile manner, we've seen some positive change, but so far it's not enough. So the positive change we've seen is that we have started to see cross-functional teams being built. And those teams co-located, working on stuff, right-sized to get the job done, with all the tools and kind of the setup of the environment, just right for working. But we're still quite hierarchically structured because although those cross-functional teams are sat over there working on things, they still report into their legacy structure. And I've got a slide here that sort of shows the transition, which is a positive story, but it says there's more to come. So the structure at the top was my technology structure with me at the top, and then my directs, and then their direct reports underneath in 2013. Very hierarchical, not a very flat structure at all, very, very pyramid-based. You can see that slowly but surely, and it has been a painful process to convince people this is a good idea, we have started to flatten. So I've gone from 4 direct reports to 6, and then some of my direct reports now have up to 10 direct reports themselves. There is still an awful lot to do. And I say there's an awful lot to do because this actually really, really matters. Because in a waterfall-heavy environment, you get away with passing around lots of emails and lots of documents because that tends to be the byproduct of working in that way. And what happens is that those documents land with 20 people, and everybody that reads the documents has the same interpretation of it. I mean, that's the beauty of writing the thing down. Now we're working in an agile environment. We are very much what we call ceremony-driven. So stand-ups, lots of people gather at different points in the day, share where they're up to with their work. Now, if they go to the stand-ups, they hear that message firsthand, and everyone gets the message. But if you weren't there, then you're reliant on someone else passing that on to you. And in a hierarchical organization, the message gets distorted very, very quickly. In fact, by the time it's passed to about the 4th person in the chain, you might as well not have bothered. And I find this all the time, that I can say something in my management team stand-up and getting on with it and learning on the way. Lesson 7, making this more than just a technology delivery ambition, aspiration, goal, is really, really hard. In part, it's hard because I chose to run with it, so it instantly gets a badge of technology because I come from the technology team. It requires a lot of work to constantly lift this to the level of the business because that was the goal. The goal was to create a responsive business, a business that could react to the changes in the market, grow, make money, do great things for our customers. It takes an awful lot of work, and I would say to anyone looking to step into a transformation of this sort, do not underestimate this, because I certainly underestimated this in the early stages. We undercommunicated, We didn't realize how hard it would be to make this appear in the eyes of the rest of the organization to be anything more than just a sort of a technology change. And you have to get people excited in it, because to really, really make this work, you have to have product owners that don't live in the technology team. You have to have those cross-functional teams that you build up. So they have to be interested. They have to see value in it to actually get their goals achieved. You need a lot of help, so you need to find some people in your organization that are as crazy as you and really want to kind of go on this pioneering adventure and do some stuff where we don't necessarily know how it's all going to work out in the end. So go find some friends. And you need some successes along the way. And when you get the successes, you really, really need to shout about them. So blog about them, talk about them in stand-ups, talk about them to the wider business as part of the sort of standard business updates. But really obsess about making this more than just a technology change, and really obsess about being honest about where you're being successful, but also where you've learned from experiments that haven't gone as you planned. Lesson 8. This actually works. Hopefully not a surprise to people in the audience, because you've come here wanting to hear about Agile, but the really pleasing thing for me is that we have seen some really high quality business results from this. So in 2014, with the initial experiment, which looking back was only just about Agile, some sort of combination of waterfall and Agile, but having that team together and having that more stand-up environment led to that situation where we were able to improve our business results. And that's actually led to the UK business growing again. We've actually doubled our account bookings in the space of 24 months, thanks to a large part to building a far more agile and responsive technology and marketing collaboration. We've done some other cool things as well. So I mentioned the mobile app earlier. So we moved from the situation in which we were buying our mobile app from a third party. We'd done one update to our customer. I think it got 3 stars when it was launched in the App Store. Then we did nothing, so it started to drift down towards 1 star. To rebuilding our own. So we hired a team of mobile app developers. We built our own. We released it in the App Store. Now we're capable of releasing another version every 2 weeks if we choose to. We definitely do that to our associate base, just so that they're sort of kept up to speed with what we're doing. And I think we're at 4 stars now on that. And we'd like to get it to 5 stars. 5 stars is hard, because there's a lot of people that like to criticize things out there in the world. But it's a big, big change for us. And getting that cadence and getting the sort of excitement of the release to the employee base and the customer base has also been a great journey. The final thing on this slide that I want to talk about is a product that we call Quick Check. And the reason I really like this one is I don't think this would have come into existence if we hadn't have been working in this way, because this was very much born in a stand-up. So this was someone had a crazy idea, they had the people around them so they could discuss it and build on it. In the old world, what would have happened is that they'd have had to have been bothered to write that down on a form. That form would have been passed around a number of departments for people to comment. Usually the comments were, let's make this look as hard as possible because we're busy enough and we don't want more things on our plate. So chances are this would have never have got off the launchpad, even if that person had decided to put it on the launchpad in the first place. But Quick Check was discussed in a stand-up. People liked the sound of it, they explored it, they built on it. They built it and they got it to market, and they got it to market very, very quickly. And we were actually first in market with it. And that was actually quite a revelation for us as well as a UK business, because normally we're a fast follower, or in many cases a slow follower. And we've had some other wins as well, also on the market-facing side, where we've been able to partner with people that historically they felt that they didn't want to work with us just because we were too slow. So we did some work with Money Supermarket earlier on this year, and for years and years they'd said, we don't want to work with you because you're too slow, Capital One. We were actually faster than their team could keep up with. Not that it was a race, but it was just nice to prove a point that we'd sort of moved massively over the space of 2 years, and we're doing some good work with them, and that partnership is going really, really well, thanks to our investment in agile methods. Lesson 9, you have to love your pioneers, because your people will drive this far faster than you can. There is only one of me. I do work absolutely non-stop, but even so, there is only one of me. So you need other people to help you on this. And that early group of pioneers, they formed a collaborative group. They called themselves the Goats. To this day, I still don't know why they're called the Goats. But they have a lovely badge with a goat on it. And they do some really, really cool stuff. They meet up, they discuss things, they challenge each other to set experiments with sort of parameters, so we can actually judge whether these experiments are good, bad, or not, and then they sort of share how those experiments are going with the wider technology and business teams. And this is a piece of artwork that group put together because they were very, very interested in how this would feel when we got there, if indeed people actually ever get there. But I really love this piece of artwork because it was sort of the culmination of a day of them just sort of sitting down and thinking about how they wanted the world to be when we were far along the Agile journey enough to actually say that we were good at it. And I hope that that is by the end of next year. That was the sort of goal that I've set myself and the team. And let's be good at this by the end of 2016. And then we can go on to be great at it. Which leads neatly onto the very last lesson, which is to get great at this, to get great at being an Agile business, does not come for free. You really have to have an awful lot of dedication to embracing a learning culture, which for many businesses is actually quite alien to them, because you tend to find, typically at the more senior levels, that people are quite close to learning because they feel they know everything, because that's how they've got to where they are. So you have to really foster this environment in which it's great to learn, and it's okay to learn. It's okay to admit that you don't know everything. And you have to make maximum use of the retrospectives that happen at the end of each of your Agile sprints, if you're using Scrum or whatever you're doing if you're using things like Kanban. But get the most out of those retrospectives, because it's funny looking back to how we used to work, because when we were in a waterfall environment, we used to have an awful lot of lessons learned sessions. But it's really interesting, because I don't really think we ever learned anything, because we would repeat those mistakes time and time and time again. What we're seeing now through the retrospectives is that the teams are actually improving. It took a while, because I think certainly for the first 6 or so months, teams weren't always necessarily learning the real lesson that was the thing they should have been picking up on through the retrospectives. But now we've started to see some really impressive systemic improvements, where we've moved from being an organization where we would reward and recognize people for fighting fires, basically. Particularly what we found when we switched from waterfall to Agile is that our development and test environments were just absolutely overwhelmed with the demand on them, and were really crushed for a number of months. Through leveraging a lot of data, so I've been encouraging the organization to get a lot more data orientated. Through leveraging the data, we've been able to isolate the root causes of a lot of the impediments that the teams were struggling with, and actually tackle those head on. And taking the example of the environments, we've seen a dramatic improvement in impediment reduction over the course of the last 6 months from embracing this learn with feedback mentality. So before I end, let's check in on where the teams are now. So I threw up the slide that showed where the teams were, where my four little populations were at the start of this journey. I would say the picture now looks a lot more like this. I still have a few historians, but they are dwindling because most have just decided to leave, and that's good for them and it's good for me. I've still got a population of bookworms, but interestingly, the bookworms that really wanted to make a positive change have joined the pioneers, and now you can't really sort of distinguish between the two. If anything, the bookworms have gone into the pioneers and actually encouraged them to sort of go out and learn more about what's going on in the wider world, and sort of bringing the outside in, which has been fantastic. I've still got builders, but some of my more senior builders are now pioneers. Some of them have seen the light and have actually realized that just sprinting and sort of whipping their teams to death, and sort of like death marches and all this stuff, it's not good in the long run. Eventually your teams burn out. Eventually the teams don't solve problems in as innovative way as they can, so you need to build slack into the system if you really want to optimize the flow over the long run. A number of the builders have seen that and they joined the pioneering group. So my pioneers are swelling, and I hope over time that becomes the group of people. But we've made a lot of positive progress, but I didn't want to stand here and say that the world is rosy, because, as you know, for those of you in the room that are attempting something like this, it does take time, and it requires continual reinforcement. And finally, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. As I say, I've been Rob Harding. That is my Twitter handle up there if you want to follow me or send me a message or send me a picture of today or send me some reviews. Anything you want, you can send me anything you want. I work for Capital One. It's an amazing place to work. We are on a mission. We're on a mission to change banking for good. That sounds an incredibly brave statement, but we are prepared to dream big. And I hope that following the 2 days of this conference, you are all in a space where you can dream big too. And with that, I'm done. I don't know whether you want me to
A big round of applause for Rob Harding. Yes, and I do want you to answer some questions.
Ali Mohammed. I'm the CEO of African Brand Warrior and representing Kenya and the African continent. The question that I present here today is obviously as an African. As we sit and we talk about being agile and understanding, yes, that this is very key for us to move and progress and transform. I think one of the things that tends to be missed out is, you know, we've all been exposed to a lot of things that happen globally. But the challenge always comes in terms of how to localize it. And with technology coming in, one of the biggest disadvantages, considering I come in from the background of strategy and marketing and consumer insight, is that we tend to move away from the human interaction. And technology, unfortunately, has brought that barrier where, yes, people work like silos. It's fantastic that, you know, what Capital One has been able to do in terms of giving a lot more accountability and responsibility, you know, in a flat manner. But what that also tends to do is that people move away from the human interaction, human element. And Africa, one of the things that we do, and that's the reason we survive, you know, having open air markets and still having very less retail chains, is purely because we go out there wanting to hug people, wanting to laugh, and being able to interact and get that, you know, personal satisfaction of being able to understand what word of mouth performance is and how things work. The question to you is, taking into account that you're coming in from a world where we all know it's 8 to 5, everybody works like a busy bee, you know, it's all about projects, it's all about deadlines. And then you have software and technology where you're communicating in a faceless manner with your consumer. How do you see that being able to work on this continent where we know it's all about life and being able to see people and interact with them, but still fitting in technology?
Great question. So, I mean, the way I look at that is, I think a big part of sort of winning in a far more digital environment is to really obsess about how you bring that kind of humanity and technology together. So something that Capital One has really been getting sort of deeply involved in is this concept of design thinking, which may be familiar to a number of you, where you really do look at how you create a more positive intersection of technology and business and human-centered design. And through doing that, you hopefully come out with some products that your customers will love far more than if you just maybe were more obsessing about the technology angle or the business angle. But again, that takes time, and it's been hard for Capital One, because I would say for many years we were probably dominated by kind of more the business side. I think the technology side has grown up, and what we're really doing at the minute is to try and go out there and find some amazing design-orientated people that really do obsess about how our customers interact with our products, just to make sure that we don't, in this kind of transition to a more digital world, we don't lose that humanity. And personally, I mean, I think although something like a good example in our business is that we've been very reliant on call centers for servicing our customers for many years, which many people feel is actually quite a human thing because you're talking to another human being. But actually, sometimes that can be far more faceless than actually putting the customer in direct control of what they want to do through a really nicely, nicely well-formed and well-designed mobile app or a screen that renders nicely on a mobile. So for me, I certainly see there's a place for the business, the technology, and the human-centered design. And I think it's only by combining the three that you make sure that you sort of stay on the right path and ultimately do the right thing for the customers. Another thing that came to me when you were sort of talking about sort of technology evolution, I think that you have an opportunity to leapfrog some of the European American companies, because for many, many years we've been obsessed with buying very, very expensive technology from the big corporates like Oracle, IBM, etc. I said, the world has moved on now, and open source technology is far, far cheaper and far more widespread, and actually, in many cases, far better than the industrial version of them. And you'll find that the people that you have leaving universities are probably far more well versed with that than they are of the equivalent Oracle, IBM product. So I'd say, make sure that you are leapfrogging where we are in America and Europe, and actually go straight for the open source products from a technology standpoint, because it really, really will accelerate your companies.
Can we have another question from somebody else?
Raymond Anukwafo is my name. I'm from GTUC, and I would like to ask a very simple question. Ghana Technology University College. Okay, I want to ask Mr. Rob what he thinks of the current technological unemployment that is facing our society, as a physicist and then somebody who is into technology. What is your view on the technological unemployment, and how can we minimize, if not eliminate it? Thank you.
I don't know a lot about the employment scene in Ghana, but one thing I would say is that software is eating the world. So I would say, if you are equipping yourselves with the skills to go and do some great things with technology, that will serve you extremely well, hopefully, for the future. Because certainly what I see in the UK over the last few years is that we cannot train enough people to fill all of the technology jobs that are out there. And the same is true for a number of countries around the world. So I would hope that any level of unemployment from a technology standpoint is actually relatively short-lived, because companies don't function nowadays without software and information at the heart of what they're trying to do. And in fact, any company that puts those at the heart can really start to move ahead very, very rapidly against companies that take more traditional approaches. So I would say, keep the faith. I would hope that people will start to see the power that software and information can bring to companies and businesses in Ghana, and hopefully people will want to snap you up and get you working for them.
Rob, I'd like to add to that for this young man. The unemployment situation in Ghana is very, very serious, right? And that's the reason why some of us have come over to try and share our knowledge in technology, and where we think you can market your skills and make yourself global players, okay? So in the internet world, in the software development world, there's all sorts of roles: product owner roles, business analyst roles, scrum master roles, testing roles. One of the things I'm very passionate about is to change some of you into testers, professional software testers, so that you can actually market yourself as software testers for the industry. As Rob says, you've got to keep the faith, because one of the software industry is one of the only industry that's going to continue to grow. It's not going to get less. We're going to need more of you. England is struggling for software professionals. They're shipping them in from India and different places. America is struggling for software professionals. They're shipping them in from India and all sorts of places. India has made it their mission to be a country that exports software intelligentsia. Okay? We can do the same in Africa. So keep the faith and keep skilling yourselves up in things like Agile and software development generally. Okay? Thank you.
My question is to take you on your 5th lesson learned about organizing for the information age. I think that is a very important point. And for most of the other methodologies in software engineering, we really tend to look at that. Particular with this is the recent quest to actually define all requirements as clearly as possible before a project starts. Now with your agility, you're talking about incremental development, a push at a time, rapid, let me say, spill out of your products. How did you really manage this preparation for the information age? Did you use any particular technologies to help you do that, particularly in flattening most of your hierarchical structures? I'll be glad if you could share that with us.
Sure. No, I haven't used any technology in it. And as I said, if you want a blueprint for how the world could look in the information age, read that book because it is amazing. So we're not quite there. I dream of a far flatter organization where the communication can just flow very, very quickly and very, very accurately through the organization. I also dream of an organization in which we are not marketing, technology, operations, HR, and we actually have the people in the team, these full stack teams that can go and do stuff in market. But to be honest, I don't think it's really a technology conundrum. There are technologies that allow us to work well across sites. You know, whether it's a Nottingham office working with London or the London office working with our people in Bangalore. Technology helps, but this is far, far more of a human dynamic. And the reason I think it will take time is there are people joining my organization now straight out of university that don't understand why we organize in the way we do. And they are fully embracing, you know, you don't have to convince them that these cross-functional teams, and actually not obsessing about someone's level or seniority, why that it's irrelevant, it's what you know and it's what you can contribute to that team that matters. But then again, there's a lot of people in the organization that have worked there a long time, that have worked hard in building their careers, and they take a certain amount of personal pride in being at the top of a pyramid. And it's very, very hard to encourage those people to embrace the change. It's one of these things, it's just constant reinforcement. It's constant sort of pointing out where we've had successes by doing these things that will move us along. And over time, as I say, more people will have joined the organization, you'll get these people coming through. And even Karen and I have been discussing that, wouldn't it be great if we just removed all levels from the organization? So it did just become about what you bring to the team, and that's the thing that matters. And we don't worry about who is the more senior person in that group. And actually in parts of Capital One, we've started to see that because the teams form with the right skills, and people don't really care what level they are. But there's no groundswell of that. That's just a sort of in its embryonic form right now. But I don't think it's a technology thing. It is a people thing.
Again, yeah.
So from Central University, lecturer, faculty. My question is, I'm trying to link with my first madam. I have a class where I try to take part online with my students, but then you still have some of them who struggle with IT, right? And we are in a world, like my colleague said, our culture, you know, Africans, our culture, we would want to have what we call affection. You need to see the person have a feel of the lecturer or the customer, right? So how do we reach this thing in Africa? At times we forget that technology in our part of the world, it looks a bit new to us. I mean, some of us, we saw computers after 25 years.
For me, I mean, great question again. For me, it's all about inspiring that culture of learning, because wherever you are at that, people don't know how to use. I mean, I see that every day within my business. We're always bringing new things in that people don't know about. You have to inspire people to take risks, career risks or whatever risk, but you know, go and learn about this thing and then teach your colleagues how to use it. And if you have no one within your organization, well, yes, you can fast track it. Find someone from outside your organization, bring them in to sit with your teams and get them kind of trained up by working on a project. When we turbocharged our Agile transformation by getting some fantastic coaches in to help us, Nana and Geronimo and some others that are here today. So either find someone within your team that's willing to learn and encourage them and give them the investment to upskill. Find someone that you can bring in to help the team. But don't think it's unique to you, because across the world there's new technology that people don't know about. Stuff's getting invented every day, right? But it's about recognizing that you're never done. You have to, I mean, we heard about it earlier, you have to invest. What will define you in the information age is your ability to outpace the rate of change with your learning, and recognize that your learning is never finished.
A big round of applause for Rob Harding. Thank you very much, Rob. That was very inspirational and very informative.